You think I'm begging for a handout? I just fixed the system you didn't even know was broken. Before we dive into this story, I need to know something. Have you ever been underestimated, like your whole worth was judged in 10 minutes flat? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. And if you've ever felt like love was worth fighting for, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to hear how this ends. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. Ethan Cole had been to 17 interviews in 4 months. Each time, he came home with the same crumpled folder, the same forced smile for his daughter, and the same knot in his stomach. This morning, his tie was crooked, his coffee was cold, and his old Honda coughed like it was protesting life itself. The Grant Tech building towered over downtown Cleveland. Sleek glass, expensive silence. Inside, people moved like they belonged. Ethan didn't. Not yet. He checked his reflection in the revolving door. Tired eyes, cheap suit. A tiny sticker from Lily's lunchbox still stuck to his sleeve. A pink unicorn. He smiled weakly and didn't peel it off. "Daddy, keep it," Lily had said that morning, twirling in her mismatched socks. For good luck. He needed more than luck. He needed a miracle. Inside, the receptionist's tone was polite but distracted. "Mr. Cole? Conference room B. Ms. Grant will see you shortly." He waited, hands clasped, eyes scanning the glass walls where executives discussed numbers that sounded like galaxies away from his world. Then she walked in, Amelia Grant. Tall, sharp, polished like the building itself. The kind of woman who didn't waste a single second. "Ethan Cole," she said, sitting across from him. "Former lead engineer at Midline Robotics. Tell me why you left." He hesitated. "Downsizing. I was one of many. And since then, freelance work. Fixing systems, automation repairs, some remote consulting. I've been out of full-time work for 3 years," she interrupted, scanning his resume. "Why should I think you can handle Grant Tech's pace now?" The question hit harder than intended. "I can handle it," he said softly. "I just need a chance to prove it." Her eyes flicked to his suit, his worn briefcase, the tiny unicorn sticker. "You're a single parent?" "Yes, ma'am. My daughter's 8. Must be complicated." "It's not easy," he admitted. "But she's my reason to show up." For a brief second, something softened in Amelia's expression. Then it vanished. "Thank you, Mr. Cole. We'll be in touch." That phrase again. The professional version of no. Ethan stood, nodded, and walked out. He didn't look back until he reached the elevator. But just before the doors closed, he caught Amelia typing something, fast and sharp, her jaw clenched. He exhaled, pressed lobby, and told himself it didn't matter. He'd figure something out. He always did. Downstairs, the world went on. Car horns, food trucks, people laughing into phones. But his hands shook as he fumbled his car keys. He leaned against the steering wheel. "Okay, Lily," he whispered. "We'll be okay." But that's when it happened. A voice on the radio in the building lobby caught his attention. Urgent, panicked. All systems frozen. Grant Tech's new prototypes down. Launch delayed indefinitely. He froze. Prototype? Frozen systems? He'd seen that interface earlier on her laptop. The diagnostic pattern was familiar. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his laptop, marched back through the lobby. Security tried to stop him, but he was already pointing toward the elevator. "Tell Amelia Grant. I can fix it." When he burst into the conference room, she was standing beside 3 frantic engineers. "What are you doing here?" she snapped. "You're using a vCore sequencing model, right? The autosync loops trapped in recursive feedback." She blinked. "You don't know that." He moved past her, fingers flying across the nearest console. "I know because Midline built the first version. Watch the core line, right here." A tense silence filled the room. Then, one by one, the frozen displays flickered back to life. The room erupted in stunned relief. Ethan stood there, breathless, hands trembling. "It's done. The system's stable again." Amelia's jaw tightened. For the first time, she didn't know what to say. That's the moment we began with. You think I'm begging for a handout? He said, voice breaking. I just fixed the system you didn't even know was broken. And outside, through the glass walls of Grant Tech, the afternoon sunlight broke through the clouds like an answer. But neither of them knew this was only the beginning. The office had gone quiet after Ethan left the room. Amelia stood by the glass wall, staring at the screens now glowing with life. Every system was running again. Her engineers were whispering, stunned. How did he know that? One of them asked. She didn't answer. Her mind replayed his voice, the frustration, the honesty. I just fixed the system you didn't even know was broken. That line stayed with her longer than it should have. Downstairs, Ethan was already walking across the parking lot, clutching his laptop bag. He wasn't sure if what he'd done was brave or foolish. Probably both. But for the first time in months, he'd followed his gut instead of fear. As he unlocked his car, a security guard called out, "Mr. Cole? Ms. Grant wants you to come back up." He froze. Wait, what? Back upstairs. Now. When the elevator doors opened, Amelia was waiting. This time, she wasn't behind her desk. She stood near the corner of the conference table, sleeves rolled up, her hair slightly out of place. The perfection was cracking. I should fire you for barging in, she said flatly. I don't work here, he replied. That's true. She paused, then sighed. But I should also thank you. He nodded once. You're welcome. She studied him for a long moment. That system you fixed, it saved us millions. I just did what anyone would have done. No, she said. No one else saw it. You did. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. So what now? That depends, Amelia said quietly. Are you still looking for a job? He hesitated. I'm always looking. She gave a small smile, the kind people wear when they're trying not to admit they were wrong. Let's call this a second interview. Over the next hour, they sat across from each other again. But this time, something was different. The air wasn't cold. It was cautious, curious. Amelia asked about his work, his life, his daughter. He spoke simply, no pretense. She listened, really listened. At one point he said, Lily's smart. Smarter than me sometimes. She keeps me going. That made Amelia's eyes soften. 8, you said? Yeah. 3rd grade. She wants to build robots someday. A small silence followed. Then Amelia said, I lost my husband 5 years ago. He was our lead designer before I took over. Ethan looked up. The room suddenly felt smaller. I'm sorry, he said. She nodded. He used to say machines only do what you tell them. People, they do what they feel. Ethan smiled faintly. Sounds like a wise man. He was, she whispered. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of the building filled the quiet. 2 people from different worlds, both carrying ghosts, finding an unexpected stillness. Then her phone buzzed. The spell broke. Duty calls, she said, standing. But Mr. Cole, she hesitated. You may have just earned yourself a temporary position here. Let's see how it goes. Ethan tried not to grin. Thank you, Ms. Grant. Amelia, she corrected. When you're fixing my systems, call me Amelia. That night, Ethan drove home under a gray Ohio sky, the kind that looks like it's holding back snow. His car heater wheezed. Lily was waiting at the window of their small apartment, her hair messy, her smile bright. Daddy, she shouted as he walked in. Did you get the job? Not yet, he said, crouching down to hug her. But we got something better, a chance. She beamed. Told you my unicorn sticker worked. He laughed, pressing his forehead against hers. Guess you were right. In that tiny living room, with takeout boxes and a flickering lamp, something shifted. Hope, fragile but real, was back. 2 days later, Ethan started at Grant Tech. Contract basis. 3 weeks. No promises. The office was a maze of glass and light. Everyone seemed to know their place except him. But when he passed Amelia's office, she looked up from her computer and nodded. A silent welcome. Hours blurred into late evenings. They worked on projects, sometimes side by side. She was exacting, he was patient. She chased perfection, he chased solutions. Somewhere between those differences, a rhythm began to form. At lunch one day, they found themselves in the break room alone. Amelia poured coffee. Ethan reheated leftover pasta in the microwave. "You ever take a real lunch?" he asked, half smiling. She raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean, away from the laptop, maybe outside, with air, birds, sunlight." "I can't remember the last time I did," she admitted. He pointed toward the window. "Then that's your homework." Amelia laughed. An unguarded, almost surprised laugh that made him look up. For a second, the CEO was just a woman trying to remember what joy sounded like. That evening, when Ethan left, she caught herself staring out the window, watching him walk across the lot, phone pressed to his ear, probably talking to Lily. She hadn't realized how long it had been since she'd cared about someone's voice that much. Later, in her office, she found herself typing his name into the employee portal to check his file. Just for context, she told herself. But the moment she saw single parent, dependent, Lily Cole, something inside her shifted. She thought about how he spoke of his daughter, not with exhaustion, but with love. Her late husband had been like that once. And that's when the guilt settled in. She'd nearly thrown this man out without a second thought. Yet he had walked back in and saved her company when she was too proud to see the problem herself. Stories like this make you think, don't they? How many people do we overlook because we're too busy protecting our pride? If this moment made you feel something, that tiny ache of, "I've done that too," maybe this is your reminder to stay. Hit that subscribe button, not for me, but for the stories that wake something in you. A week later, Grant Tech landed a major investor because of the system Ethan repaired. He didn't brag. He just smiled and said, "Glad it worked." Amelia, watching him in the reflection of her office window, realized something unsettling. She trusted him. More than she trusted anyone in years. But trust is a strange thing. It brings closeness and fear. Because when someone gets close enough to see your scars, they also get close enough to reopen them. And Amelia Grant wasn't ready for that. That Friday evening, as the office emptied and lights dimmed, Ethan stopped by her door. "Heading out?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Lily's got her school talent show tonight." She smiled. "You should go. Don't be late." He nodded. "Good night, Amelia." "Good night, Ethan." After he left, she stood by the window again, staring at the city lights. A reflection of herself looked back. The CEO who had everything, and yet felt something missing. She whispered under her breath, "What are you doing?" Because somehow, a single dad from the other side of town was starting to matter. And neither of them saw what was coming next. Pride is a liar, and theirs was about to cost them everything. Ethan was starting to fit in. At least that's what people said. He showed up early, fixed what others couldn't, and went home late. Still, every time he walked past Amelia's office, he felt something tighten in his chest. It wasn't attraction, not yet. It was something harder to name. Respect mixed with confusion, like trying to understand sunlight after months of rain. Amelia, on the other hand, kept her distance. She told herself it was professional. But the truth was simpler. She didn't know what to do with someone who made her feel seen. One Tuesday morning, they stood side by side in the lab, reviewing blueprints for the next launch. Amelia pointed to a circuit diagram. "If we merge this path, we'll double the efficiency." Ethan frowned. "Or overload the sensor." She looked at him. "Are you questioning my design?" He hesitated. "No. I'm trying to make sure it doesn't crash again." Her jaw tightened. "Noted." The air grew heavy. He wanted to explain, but instead, he just nodded and stepped back. As he walked away, Amelia felt a twist of guilt in her chest. She hadn't meant to sound cold, but being wrong, even a little, still felt like weakness to her. That afternoon, Ethan met Lily at the school pickup line. She ran to him, backpack bouncing, hands covered in paint. "Daddy, guess what? I got picked for the art show." He lifted her up, laughing. "That's amazing. Can you come?" she asked. "Of course I'll come." But later that night, when his phone buzzed with a late text from Amelia. Need your eyes on the prototype update by 8 a.m. His heart sank. Lily was already asleep, her drawing pinned to the fridge. He looked at it. Two stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun, and whispered, "I'll make it up to you, kiddo." He didn't realize she'd hear him. Half asleep, Lily mumbled, "You always say that, Daddy." Those 5 words hit harder than any rejection ever had. The next morning, Ethan walked into Grant Tech with tired eyes. Amelia noticed immediately. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," he said too quickly. "Just didn't sleep much." She nodded but didn't press. Later that day, she overheard 2 employees talking in the hallway. "He's good," one said. "But single dad? That's rough. Bet he can't keep up with the workload," the other added. Amelia stopped walking. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to defend him, to step in. But she didn't. She just turned away. It was easier to pretend not to care. That Friday, Ethan missed Lily's art show. He was sitting in Amelia's office, showing her a revised code flow when his phone buzzed. "It's starting now, Daddy. Where are you?" He froze. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. Amelia glanced at the message before he could hide it. "You can go," she said softly. "It's okay. We need to finish this." "Ethan, it's fine," he cut in. "Deadlines don't wait." He smiled like it didn't matter, but she saw the flicker in his eyes, the kind that only comes from disappointment you can't afford to show. When he finally got home, Lily was asleep on the couch, her little trophy clutched in one hand. He knelt beside her, whispering, "I'm sorry, baby." She didn't stir. But her drawing from earlier, the one on the fridge, now had a 3rd figure added. A woman with long brown hair. He didn't know why, but it made his throat tighten. On Sunday, Amelia found herself driving through downtown alone. She ended up in a small diner, the kind with sticky menus and coffee that never tasted right. She sat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass. Families came and went. Kids laughing, parents arguing quietly, life happening all around her. And she thought about Ethan, about Lily, about how she'd built walls so high that even kindness felt like a threat. Her phone buzzed again. A work update, another demand. But for the first time, she ignored it. Instead, she whispered to herself, "What am I so afraid of?" The answer came quietly, being seen. Monday came with a chill wind. Inside Grant Tech, the tension was back. Ethan noticed it in Amelia's tone, in the way she avoided eye contact. At one point, he finally asked, "Did I do something wrong?" She looked up. "Why would you think that?" "Because every time I try to help, it feels like I'm crossing a line I can't see." Her eyes softened. "It's not you, Ethan. It's me trying to remember how to let people in." He smiled faintly. "You could start small." "How?" "Let me buy you coffee." She laughed once, short, nervous. "I don't drink coffee." "Then tea. Or water. Or whatever people like you drink when they're pretending not to need a break." That made her laugh again. For the first time in weeks, the air between them felt easy. But that's the thing about comfort. It never lasts long when pride's still in the room. Later that day, the company board reviewed the project results. Amelia presented. Ethan stood quietly by her side, ready to answer any technical questions. When one of the board members asked about the system fix that saved the company weeks ago, Amelia froze. It was her moment to give credit. But in front of the board, investors, journalists, reputation on the line, she said, "Our team worked tirelessly to restore functionality." Our team, not Ethan. Not the man who had risked his job to walk back in and fix it. He didn't say a word, just nodded, kept his eyes on the floor, and walked out when the meeting ended. Amelia called after him, but he didn't turn around. That night, she sat in her office long after everyone had gone home. Outside, the Cleveland sky glowed orange from city lights. Inside, her heart felt heavier than the silence around her. She opened her email, started typing, "Ethan, I owe you an apology." Then deleted it. Somehow, saying sorry felt harder than rebuilding a system. Across town, Ethan sat on his couch, Lily asleep beside him again. The TV hummed softly. He scrolled through job postings, not sure why. He already had one, but now it felt temporary again. He closed the laptop and looked at his daughter. "We'll be okay," he whispered, but the truth sat heavy on his chest. Maybe this job wasn't meant to last. Maybe nothing was. Pride is a liar, and when it builds walls high enough, love has to fight to climb over them. The week after the board meeting was tense. Ethan stopped coming to Amelia's office unless she called for him. She noticed the change immediately. The quiet hallway, the missing laugh, the way his coffee mug stayed on the far corner of his desk instead of near hers. At first, she told herself it didn't matter. Then the silence started to bother her. Work had never felt this heavy before. On Wednesday morning, Grant Tech's biggest client called with bad news. Their new production line was failing, and the only system engineer who could repair it was Ethan. Amelia had no choice. She walked to his desk. "Cole," she said, trying to sound composed. "We've got a problem in Cincinnati. Factory line's down. You're the only one who can handle it." He looked up. "When?" "Tonight. We leave in an hour." Her voice was even, but her heart was racing. She didn't like that, he could tell. Ethan hesitated. "We?" "Yes. I'm meeting the client personally." He nodded slowly. "All right." And just like that, they were back in the same car. A quiet 2-hour drive through Ohio farmland, rain streaking the windshield. The highway stretched out in front of them. Amelia focused on the road. Ethan stared out the window. Finally, she said, "You're quiet." He gave a small shrug. "Didn't think you wanted small talk." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Silence again. The sound of the wipers filled the space. After a while, she whispered, "You should have gotten credit at that meeting." He glanced at her. "It's fine." "It's not." He shook his head. "Amelia, I've got bigger things to worry about, like making rent and raising my kid. Recognition doesn't pay bills." She bit her lip. "Still, I was wrong." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time she saw the exhaustion in his eyes. Not anger, just tired grace. "Thank you," he said quietly. They reached Cincinnati after dark. The factory was loud, lit by harsh fluorescent lights. Machines hissed, alarms blinked red. Ethan rolled up his sleeves. "Let's see what we're dealing with." Amelia followed, clipboard in hand, trying to stay out of his way. But she couldn't help watching him work. Calm, focused, hands steady. An hour passed, then 2. He crouched by the main panel, muttering calculations under his breath. She handed him tools, wires, a flashlight. For once, they moved like a team. Around midnight, the machine restarted. Humming smooth, steady, alive again. A few engineers clapped. Amelia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. "Good job," she said softly. He smiled a little. "Told you it was the sensor." "Yeah, you did." They checked into a roadside hotel a few blocks away. 2 rooms, same floor. When they reached the hallway, she said, "Thank you again. For everything." "Just doing my job," he replied. She nodded, fumbling for her keycard. "Good night, Ethan." "Good night, Amelia." She turned to unlock her door, but it jammed. No light, no click. She tried again, groaned. He watched for a second, amused. "Want help?" "I can handle." The lock beeped, then flashed red. He smiled. "Guess not." A maintenance worker came, shook his head. "Sorry, ma'am. Electronic panels fried. We'll need a part. Probably morning before it's fixed." The clerk offered an apology. "We can comp 1 room tonight." Amelia froze. 1 room? Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Guess that's our only option." She hesitated, then sighed. "Fine." The room was small, 1 bed, 1 worn armchair, and a steady buzz from the old heater. Ethan tossed his jacket over the chair. "I'll take the floor." "Don't be ridiculous," Amelia said. "I'll take the chair." "It's fine, Amelia. I've slept in worse places." She looked at him. "You shouldn't have to." He smiled faintly. "Neither should you." The silence between them grew warmer, softer. Not awkward, but human. They talked quietly as the night went on. About her late husband, about his daughter, about failure and second chances. At one point, she asked, "Do you ever stop worrying?" He thought for a moment. "No, but I've learned that sometimes the things we lose make space for the things we need." She nodded slowly. "You really believe that?" "I have to," he said. "Otherwise, what's the point?" For a while, they didn't speak. The rain outside hit the window in a slow rhythm. Amelia watched the reflection of the city lights in the glass. He was right. She'd spent years filling every loss with work, every wound with control. Maybe that's why she felt calmer sitting in that tiny room than she had in her penthouse in months. Just after 2 a.m., Ethan's phone buzzed. He read the message, smiled. "Lily." She texted good night. Amelia's voice softened. "She loves you a lot." "She's all I've got," he said. "Maybe not for long," she whispered. But he didn't hear her. When he finally drifted off in the armchair, Amelia lay awake on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The hum of the heater filled the quiet. She looked at him, his head tilted back, his breathing steady, and realized how much she'd missed simply trusting someone. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't lonely. Morning came with sunlight cutting through the blinds. Ethan was already awake, brewing hotel coffee that smelled faintly like cardboard. "Morning," he said. "Morning." She rubbed her eyes, smiling. "You didn't sleep?" "Not much, but I think I figured out a fix for that software delay we saw last week." She laughed. "You never stop, do you?" "Guess not." On the drive back to Cleveland, the mood was lighter. They joked about bad coffee, traffic, and hotel breakfasts. But underneath the laughter, something unspoken hummed, the kind of pull that makes your chest ache in a good way. When they reached the city limits, the skyline came into view. Amelia caught herself thinking, "I don't want this drive to end." At the stoplight near Grant Tech, she finally said, "Ethan, yeah, thank you for staying, for not giving up on me." He looked at her for a long second. "Guess we both needed to be reminded what we're worth." She smiled, a quiet one that stayed long after he stepped out of the car. Have you ever been stuck with someone who made you feel too much? Someone you couldn't stop thinking about? Tell me what happened. That night, Amelia stood in her office again, staring at the lights of downtown Cleveland. For the first time, she didn't feel like the city was closing in. She whispered to herself, "He's changing me." And across town, Ethan tucked Lily into bed, his phone buzzing with a message from Amelia. "Tomorrow, 8 a.m. We need to talk." He stared at it for a long moment, his heart beating faster. Whatever came next, he knew. The distance between them was gone. She saw it then, the fracture in his armor, and it terrified her. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass walls of Grant Tech. Amelia was already in her office when Ethan walked in. He looked calm, but something in his eyes was distant, almost guarded. She motioned for him to sit. "Thanks for coming early." "No problem," he said, resting his bag on the floor. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of computers filled the silence. Then she said quietly, "We need to talk about what happened in Cincinnati." Ethan looked up. "What about it?" "That night. The system, the hotel, everything felt different." He hesitated. "Different how?" Her voice lowered. "Like maybe we weren't just co-workers anymore." Ethan's heart pounded. "Amelia." "I know," she interrupted. "I shouldn't have said that." She turned toward the window. "You're an employee. I'm your boss. It's complicated." He stood slowly. "It doesn't have to be." "Yes, it does." Her voice cracked slightly. "You have a daughter. I have a company. I can't afford to get this wrong." The space between them filled with everything they couldn't say. He finally whispered, "Then maybe I should quit before we do." She spun around. "Don't, please." But he was already walking toward the door. "You said it yourself. It's complicated." That afternoon, Amelia buried herself in meetings, numbers, anything to drown the noise in her head. But everywhere she looked, she saw traces of him. His coffee cup still on the table, his handwriting on the whiteboard, the quiet steadiness he'd brought to her chaos. She couldn't focus. By 6 p.m., she was still sitting in the darkened boardroom, laptop closed, staring at nothing. That's when her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. "Can we talk? Just 5 minutes." She hesitated, then typed back, "Okay, my office." When he walked in, he looked nervous, almost vulnerable. "I didn't mean to walk out," he said. I didn't want to make things harder for you." Amelia nodded slowly. "You didn't. I made them hard myself." He took a breath. "You asked me once if I ever stop worrying. The truth is, I don't. But it's not just about bills or jobs. It's about people leaving." She frowned. "Who left?" He swallowed. "Lily's mom. She walked out when our daughter was 2. Said she couldn't handle the stress. I promised myself I'd never depend on anyone again. Not for love, not for help. It's easier that way." Amelia's throat tightened. "Ethan." He smiled sadly. "And now I'm breaking that promise. Because when you look at me the way you did that night, I forget to keep my guard up." For a second, neither moved. The air felt heavy with everything unsaid. Then Amelia whispered, "You're not the only one who's scared." She walked to the window, her reflection faint in the glass. "When my husband died, I told myself I'd never let anyone get close again. It was easier to run a company than to risk feeling that kind of loss twice." Ethan took a slow step closer. "You don't have to keep running." "I don't know how to stop," she said. He wanted to reach out but didn't. "Then maybe we learn together." For a heartbeat, hope filled the room. Fragile but real. Then her phone rang. She ignored it once, then again. Finally, she answered. A board member's voice came through, sharp and worried. "Amelia, the investors are reconsidering the merger. They think hiring Cole was a conflict of interest. They're asking questions." Her stomach dropped. "What questions?" "They think you brought him in for personal reasons." She froze. Ethan heard every word. When the call ended, he spoke quietly. "Guess they don't think I belong here after all." "That's not true," she said. He gave a hollow laugh. "You said it's complicated. Turns out they agree." "Ethan, please." But he was already shaking his head. "You don't have to defend me. I'll make it easy for everyone." He walked out again, and this time, she didn't stop him. That night, rain pounded against her office windows. The city outside blurred into streaks of yellow and gray. She sat alone, her heart racing with guilt. He'd been right there, open, honest, and she'd let him walk out again. For years, she told herself that love and leadership couldn't live in the same space. But now she wasn't sure which one she'd lost more completely. Across town, Ethan stood under the awning of Lily's school, waiting for her after choir practice. She ran into his arms, laughing. "Daddy, you came early." He smiled, holding her tight. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." But behind the smile, his chest ached. He had no idea what came next. That night, after Lily fell asleep, he sat at the kitchen table filling out new job applications. He wanted to move forward, but every form, every question, reminded him of what he was walking away from. When his phone buzzed, he didn't look. It was Amelia. "Message. I'm sorry. For everything." He typed, deleted, then typed again. Maybe some things aren't meant to be fixed. He hit send. 2 days passed. Then 3-work at Grant Tech went on without him. Meetings, updates, progress, all mechanical. But Amelia's heart wasn't in any of it. Every time someone mentioned the new system, she thought of him. Every time Lily's name came up in her notes, she wondered if she'd ever see that little girl's smile in person again. She knew she had to find him. Friday night, she finally drove across town. His apartment building stood near the edge of Lake Erie. Brick walls, small windows glowing faintly in the rain. She climbed the stairs and knocked once. Then again. The door opened. Ethan stood there, surprised, holding a towel over his shoulder. "Amelia, I shouldn't have come," she said quickly. "But I had to." He didn't speak, just stepped aside. Inside, the place was small but warm. Toys on the couch, crayon drawings taped to the fridge. Lily peeked out from her bedroom door. "Hi," she said softly. Amelia smiled. "Hi, sweetheart." Ethan looked uncomfortable. You shouldn't have driven all this way. I didn't come for work, she said. I came because I was wrong. He folded his arms. About what? About everything. You didn't need saving, I did. You made me remember what it means to care. He stared at her for a long second, then shook his head. I can't let you risk your career for me. She stepped closer. It's not about risk. It's about truth. But before she could say more, Lily came running out, holding a drawing. A woman, a man, and a little girl under a sun. Amelia froze. It was the same drawing she'd seen on Ethan's fridge weeks ago, only now the woman's hand was holding the man's. Lily beamed. It's us. Daddy said families can look different, but they can still be happy. Amelia's throat tightened. She blinked back tears. I should go, she whispered. Ethan didn't stop her. He just watched her walk out into the rain. You ever watch two people who belong together walk away because they're scared? It hurts to see it, and it hurts to live it. If this moment hit you too, stay here with us. Subscribe, not for the story, but because you know how hard second chances really are. Amelia drove through the night, headlights cutting through the rain. Her hands gripped the wheel, her heart breaking open for the first time in years. She whispered to herself, "What have I done?" And somewhere across the city, Ethan stared out his window, the same question echoing inside him. 3 days passed. The city moved on, but Ethan and Amelia didn't. At Grant Tech, people whispered about why Ethan left. Some said it was money. Others said it was pride. No one knew the truth, not even Amelia. She drafted a dozen messages to him but never sent one at each time. The words felt too heavy each time. She told herself he was better off without her. But late Friday afternoon, her assistant knocked on the door. "Ms. Grant, you might want to see this," she said, handing her a printed memo. Amelia read the first line, and her breath caught. Grant Tech system compromised. Client database corrupted. Her hands trembled. It was the same system Ethan had built months ago. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and keys. Ethan was at home, sitting on the floor with Lily, helping her glue paper stars to a science project. "Daddy, how do you spell galaxy?" "JL." He stopped when his phone buzzed. It was Amelia. He almost ignored it, then sighed and answered. "Hey, Ethan, I need your help." He hesitated. "What happened?" "The network crashed. It's bad. I think someone tried to override the system. No one can fix it." He rubbed his forehead. "Amelia, I don't work there anymore." "I know, but you're the only one who understands that core design. Please." He looked at Lily, who was watching him with wide eyes. "Is it important?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, baby, it's important." She smiled. "Then go. Heroes help people." He kissed her forehead. "You're something else, you know that?" 10 minutes later, he was on his way back to Grant Tech, rain tapping against the windshield like anxious fingers. When he arrived, the building buzzed with panic. Alarms flashed red on the security screens. Teams crowded around monitors, typing fast, voices overlapping. Amelia stood in the middle of it all, pale and sleepless. When she saw him, her shoulders dropped in relief. "Thank God," she whispered. He didn't say anything, just walked straight to the console. "Tell me exactly what happened," he said. She explained quickly. The system's looping, auto-deleting entries. It's spreading to client files. He typed fast, eyes narrowing. "Someone planted a corrupt sync command. Can you stop it?" He didn't look up. "Maybe." Minutes stretched. Beeps, screens, the sound of rain outside. Everyone watched. Finally, Ethan leaned back. "Done. It's clean." The room exhaled. Amelia pressed a hand to her chest. "You saved us again." He gave a small smile. "Guess it's becoming a habit." But she saw it then, the tiredness behind his smile. The distance. "Ethan," she began softly. He shook his head. "Don't. It's fine." "No, it's not. I shouldn't have let you go." He finally looked at her. "You didn't just let me go, Amelia. You made me believe I didn't belong." The words hit her harder than any accusation. After the staff cleared out, They stood alone in the darkened lab. Amelia whispered, "You do belong here. With us. With me." He turned away. "You can't say that now. Not after everything." "I mean it." He sighed. "Then why did you care more about what they thought than about the truth?" Her voice cracked. "Because I was scared. I've already lost once, Ethan. I can't lose everything again." He turned toward her, anger softening into pain. "You think I don't get that? Every day, I wake up afraid I'm not enough. Not for Lily, not for work, not for you. But I still show up." She stared at him, tears in her eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't mean to, but you did." He started to leave, then stopped at the door. "Do you know what hurts most?" he said quietly. "You made me believe this could be different, that I could finally matter again." Then he walked out. Amelia stood frozen in the middle of the empty lab. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, the hum of the machines sounded like a heartbeat breaking apart. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying not to cry. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a CEO. She just felt human. Ethan drove aimlessly through the city, headlights cutting through the storm. Every turn reminded him of something: the coffee shop where they'd first talked, the diner they'd stopped at on the drive to Cincinnati. He pulled over near the lake, rain pounding on the windshield. He whispered to himself, "Why does doing the right thing always feel so wrong?" For a long time he just sat there, watching waves crash against the pier. Meanwhile, back at Grant Tech, Amelia sat in her office surrounded by silence. Her reflection in the glass looked foreign. Tired eyes, trembling hands, the faint outline of regret. On her desk was a sticky note, one Ethan had left weeks ago. "Nothing's broken that can't be rebuilt." She read it over and over until her eyes blurred. The next morning, Lily woke Ethan with a whisper. "Daddy?" He blinked. "Yeah, honey? Are you sad?" He smiled weakly. "A little." She climbed onto the bed, handing him a small folded note. "Then you need this." He opened it. Inside was a simple drawing, a sun rising over a gray sky. Underneath, she'd written in crooked letters, "It's okay to start over." He hugged her tight, hiding his face in her hair. "Thanks, kiddo." That night, as the rain finally cleared, Amelia drove to the same pier where he'd gone before. The sky was still gray, but the storm had passed. She whispered to herself, "Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just the beginning of goodbye." But deep down, she knew it wasn't over. Have you ever lost someone because you were too afraid to fight for them? Tell me in the comments. Maybe this story feels like yours. Ethan stood at the window of his apartment later that night, watching the last drops of rain slide down the glass in the reflection. He saw his own tired face, and behind it, a flicker of hope he didn't want to admit was still there. He whispered, "Maybe some goodbyes aren't forever." And somewhere across the city, Amelia closed her eyes and whispered the same words. Two people, one storm, and a silence that said everything they couldn't. Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just the beginning of goodbye. Morning came soft and gray over Cleveland. The storm had passed, but the air still smelled of rain and cold coffee. Ethan sat on his porch steps, mug in hand, staring at the quiet street. He'd spent the night thinking, replaying every word Amelia had said, and every one he hadn't. He'd walked away again, just like before. But this time, it didn't feel like strength. It felt like fear wearing courage's clothes. Lily came out in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes. "Daddy, you didn't sleep again." He smiled a little. "You caught me." She sat beside him, pulling a blanket around them both. "You miss her." He looked down at her small face, honest and sure. "Yeah, I do." "Then tell her," Lily said simply. "That's what you tell me when I mess up." Ethan laughed softly. "Guess you've been listening too well." She leaned on his shoulder. "People make mistakes, but good people fix them." Her words sank deep, small but true. Across town, Amelia walked along the lakefront trail. The city was waking up, joggers passing by, coffee carts opening, gulls circling above the water. She clutched her phone in her pocket, her thumb brushing over Ethan's name. She wanted to call, to apologize again, to say I miss you, but she didn't. Instead, she stopped near the pier where they'd once stood. The wood was still wet from the storm, the air sharp with salt and wind. She closed her eyes and whispered, I can't keep running from the things that make me feel alive. Her reflection in the lake stared back. Older, softer, but not broken. For the first time, she felt ready to stop surviving and start living again. Later that morning, she walked into Grand Tech with quiet resolve. Her team looked up in surprise. Morning, everyone, she said. Call an all-hands meeting. There are changes coming. In the boardroom, she stood at the head of the long glass table, the same place where fear had ruled her for years. Not today. She took a deep breath. I want to make something clear. I hired Ethan Cole because he was the best person for the job, and because he reminded me what integrity looks like. I won't let anyone twist that into something it isn't. A silence fell over the room. Then one of the senior board members, Mrs. Keller, spoke softly. You're saying this on record? Yes, Amelia said. If that means I lose a deal, I'll rebuild. But I won't lose my honesty again. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then someone began to clap point one by one. Others joined. Amelia blinked fast, surprised by the warmth rising in her chest. That evening, she walked to a small diner on Main Street, the same one where she'd once had lunch with Ethan. She ordered coffee and sat in their old booth by the window. Outside, the sun was setting low, washing the world in gold. She took out her phone again. This time, she didn't hesitate. She typed, You told me once that nothing's broken that can't be rebuilt. I believe that now. Meet me tomorrow, the pier at 6 p.m.? She pressed send before she could lose her nerve. At home, Ethan saw the message pop up while washing dishes. He read it twice. Water dripping from his hands onto the floor. Lily peeked into the kitchen. Was that her? He nodded. Then go, she said with a grin. But brush your hair first. He laughed, shaking his head. You're bougier than she is. But his heart was already racing. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning of something real. The next evening came fast. The sky over the lake glowed pink and silver. Ethan stood at the pier, hands in his pockets, heart pounding like he was 20 again. Every sound, the water, the wind, footsteps behind him, made him turn, hoping. Then he saw her. Amelia walked toward him slowly, wind lifting her hair, eyes soft but unsure. Hey, she said quietly. Hey. For a moment, neither moved. The distance between them felt like a lifetime and just one step. I didn't know if you'd come, she said. I almost didn't. But you did. Yeah, he said. Guess I'm tired of running too. They stood in silence, the lake moving gentle and wide beside them. Then Amelia spoke, voice trembling. Ethan, I was wrong. About the company, about fear, about everything. You were right. Courage isn't pretending you're fine. It's admitting you're not. He swallowed hard. And sometimes it's walking away. She looked at him, eyes wet. Are you walking away now? He hesitated. I don't know yet. She took one small step closer. Then maybe I can give you a reason to stay. He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, the anger was gone. All that remained was love that had been waiting quietly, hoping to be heard. For a long moment, they didn't speak. The sun slipped lower, painting everything in soft orange light. A train horn echoed in the distance. It felt like the whole world had stopped to breathe with them. Neither reached out. Neither needed to, because in the stillness, they both finally understood. It wasn't the storm that had broken them. It was silence. And now, silence was where healing began. Ethan turned toward the water. Watching the waves, he said quietly, almost to himself, maybe some people come into your life to remind you what home feels like. Amelia nodded. And maybe some stay to help you build it. He smiled, the kind that starts slow and feels real. For the first time in a long while, the air between them felt light again. Hopeful. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's choosing love anyway. The next morning, The city felt different. Quiet, clear, like it had finally exhaled after holding its breath too long. Ethan walked Lily to the bus stop, the air cool and bright. She tugged his sleeve before climbing aboard. "Daddy, are you going to see her again?" He smiled. "I think so." "Good," she said with a grin. "You look happier when she's around." He laughed softly. "You think so?" Lily nodded, serious now. "She makes you smile like Mom used to, but nicer." He crouched down, kissed her forehead. "Go on. You're gonna be late." As the bus pulled away, he stood there for a while, hands in his pockets, heart full and steady. Then he turned toward downtown. At Grant Tech, Amelia was waiting. She stood by the lobby window, coffee cup in hand, watching the morning light bounce off the city buildings. When she saw Ethan step through the doors, her breath caught. He looked calm, almost peaceful. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey," he replied, smiling. "Heard the company's still standing." "Barely," she teased. "But the good news is, the investors called. They approved the merger after all." His brows lifted. "You serious?" "Apparently honesty sells." He chuckled. "Guess we're both learning something new." She nodded. "Yeah, guess we are." They walked through the office together, side by side. The space buzzed with quiet admiration, people smiling, whispering. Everyone had seen the news. Amelia Grant had defended her team publicly. They reached the glass conference room, the same one where everything had fallen apart. Amelia stopped at the doorway. "You know," she said, "when I first met you, I thought you were just another interview. Someone desperate for a job." He smiled. "I was." "No," she said, shaking her head. "You were someone who refused to give up. And you reminded me why I started this company in the first place." He looked at her gently. "To build something that matters?" She nodded. "And to build it with people who do." Later that day, the office celebrated the merger approval. Laughter, clinking cups, the smell of pizza boxes in the break room. Normal, simple joy. Amelia stood off to the side, watching her team. Ethan came up beside her. "You should be out there," he said. "You're the reason this happened." She looked at him. "No, we are." He didn't answer, just smiled. And in that silence, something between them finally felt easy again. That evening, the sky turned gold over Lake Erie. Amelia and Ethan stood on the pier, the same spot where fear had once kept them apart. The water was calm now, reflecting streaks of pink and orange. "You know," Amelia said quietly, "I used to come here when I couldn't sleep, just to think." "About what?" "About what it would take to stop feeling alone." He looked at her. "And now," she smiled softly, "now I think I just had to stop being afraid to be known." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small folded note, wrinkled at the edges. "I kept this," he said. She recognized it instantly, her thank you note from months ago, the one she'd left on his desk after he solved the system bug. "Why?" she asked. "Because it reminded me that sometimes the smallest things mean the most." He handed it to her. "You were right. Nothing's broken that can't be rebuilt." Her eyes filled, but her smile stayed steady. "I'm glad you came back," he chuckled. "You didn't really give me a choice." "Good," she said, stepping closer. For a moment, they just stood there. The sound of the water, the smell of the lake, the soft hum of city life behind them. Then she reached for his hand. And this time he didn't pull away. You know, sometimes the hardest thing isn't finding love. It's letting yourself believe you deserve it. If this story reminded you that healing takes time, stick around. Subscribe not for the views, but for the truth we all forget. Every heart can find its way home. A few weeks later, life looked different. Ethan was back at Grant Tech full-time, not as a temp, but as lead systems architect. Lily had her own little corner in the break room, a coloring desk everyone helped decorate. Amelia, once always rushing, now took her coffee slow in the mornings. She laughed more, delegated more, slept better. Sometimes, Ethan would pass her office door and see her smiling at something on her screen. And he'd smile too, knowing the storm that once broke them had built something stronger. One afternoon, they took a drive out past the city. Windows down, Lily singing along to the radio. The road stretched out long and open, lined with late summer fields. Lily shouted from the back seat, "Are we there yet?" Ethan laughed. "Almost. Where are we going again?" Amelia looked over, grinning. Someplace new. They stopped at a small park near the water. Picnic tables, families laughing, the smell of grilled burgers in the air. Lily ran ahead, chasing butterflies. Amelia turned to Ethan. "You ever think about how different everything could have been?" He nodded. "All the time. But if we hadn't failed, we wouldn't have found this." He smiled. "Yeah, guess the broken parts lead us home." As the sun began to set, Lily came running back with a paper cup full of wildflowers. "These are for you," she said, handing them to Amelia, "because Daddy says you helped fix everything." Amelia knelt down, tears glinting in her eyes. "He fixed just as much." Lily tilted her head. "So you both fixed each other?" Amelia smiled. "Something like that." Lily grinned and ran off again, leaving them standing side by side in the warm glow of evening. Ethan looked at Amelia, voice quiet. "So what now?" She took his hand. "Now we keep building." The wind shifted, carrying laughter and the faint sound of church bells from town. Ethan glanced toward the horizon, where the lake met the sky, a line between past and future. And for the first time, it didn't look like an ending. It looked like home. Do you believe some people are worth the wait? If this story touched your heart, drop a heart in the comments. Because sometimes, the best love stories aren't about perfection, but persistence. Months later, a framed photo sat on Amelia's desk, 3 people smiling under a golden sky. The caption below read, "Nothing's broken that can't be rebuilt." And every morning, when sunlight touched the frame, she whispered the same quiet truth. "We made it. Thank you for watching this story to the end." If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.